key bit of data, right? People say, oh, lots of data, cherry picking, blah, blah. Just one bit of data alone should be enough to people to stop and think, oh my God, this is just unbelievable. So in the summer, towards the end of last year, second half of last year, the journal Vaccine, peer reviewed, this is like the highest impact medical journal for vaccines, right? They published a reanalysis of Pfizer and Moderna's original double-blinded randomized control trials. So this is the level, the highest quality level of evidence. Okay, with all the caveats, drug industry sponsored, all that stuff, right? But still what we call the highest quality level of evidence. Done by independent researchers. Joseph Freeman from Louisiana, he's an ER doctor, clinical data scientist. Associate editor of the BMJ, Peter Doshi. Robert Kaplan from Stanford, right? Some very eminent in terms eminence of integrity, right? I'm not for eminence-based medicine, but I'm for people who have eminence of integrity, right? They published this reanalysis. And what they found was this. In the trials that led to the approval by the regulators, we'll get onto regulators in a minute, around the world, you were more likely to suffer a serious adverse event from taking the vaccine, hospitalization, disability, life-changing event, than you were to be hospitalized with COVID. So what that means is it's highly likely this vaccine, mRNA vaccine, should never have been approved for a single human in the first place. And that rate of serious adverse events, Joe, is 1 in 800. And it's at least 1 in 800 because that just covers the first 2 months of the trial. In general, what happens is drug companies design trials where they choose people who are less likely to get side effects, so they're generally healthier. Right? And then because it's the first 2 months and I found a mechanism of harm with accelerated heart disease, like my dad died 6 months after 2 doses of the vaccine. And we have autopsy studies now showing that's what's that can happen several months after. It beggars belief. And that, I published this information and there's been an evolution. So the question now, I think what we want to do, like we talk about statins, right? Same sort of thing, same sort of concept. What is your individual benefit in absolute terms? So there's a table, actually. I shared it with Jamie earlier. I don't know if we can bring it up because I think it'd be nice to see it. So the UK government only earlier this year, about 2 or 3 months ago, I think there's the first country in the world to publish that substantial data. They released information looking at per million people vaccinated versus per million people unvaccinated by age group, during the Omicron strain. Right? So this is UK government data. So table 4, it says numbers needed to vaccinate for prevention of severe hospitalization, from 2 doses of Pfizer. So if you look at the first column, Joe, if you're 70, you have to vaccinate 2,500 people to prevent one person being hospitalized with severe COVID. If you're 60, 5,700, you start getting lower age groups, 30, 87,600, for example. If you're 20 to 29, over 100, well over 100,000 people. I mean, this efficacy level, effectiveness level is just, if it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable.
And this is just to prevent severe hospitalization.
Yes.
Again, it does not stop infection. It does not stop transmission.
Absolutely not.
And so there is some benefit of preventing severe hospitalization?
Well, yes, but the thing is, this is what we call non-randomized data. And remember earlier on I said to you that if you were unvaccinated, in general, you were higher risk than people who were vaccinated, something called healthy user bias. Right? So Carl Hennigan, who's a director of Center of Evidence-Based Medicine in Oxford, and also a general practitioner, talked about the fact that he had a couple of patients who had terminal cancer, for example, and didn't get vaccinated. And then they end up dying of COVID because they were already sicker. What I'm saying to you, Joe, is this is likely an exaggerated benefit, right? But when you balance that against the harms, which are consistent, of at least 1 in 800 after 2 doses, and there is some evidence that the more doses you have, the higher those harms become. It becomes a no-brainer. I mean, if you ask it now, if I was to ask patients this, even older patients this, if I would give them that information in that way, Joe, most people would not take it. So there's the informed consent issue, but then there is the fact that we consider vaccines to be completely safe traditionally. 1 in 800 is a very, very high figure. We've pulled other vaccines for much less. 1976 swine flu vaccine was pulled because it was found to cause a debilitating neurological condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome in about 1 in 100,000 people. Rotavirus vaccine pulled in 1999, suspended because it was found to cause a form of bowel obstruction in kids in 1 in 10,000. This is at least 1-800. I mean, it's a no-brainer. So the question then is, why have we not paused it? What's going on here? And I think the barrier that we've got, Joe, to deal with a lot of people who are not enlightened or as awake or familiar or understanding this information, it's a psychological barrier. It's not an intellectual one. Right? This is willful blindness. You know, a concept, a psychological phenomenon which we're all capable of in different circumstances, where human beings turn a blind eye to the truth in order to feel safe, avoid conflict, reduce anxiety, and protect prestige and fragile egos.